And that is the story of how I landed here in Spain for the week, Floris. Thank you so much for asking. It's very kind of you. Welcome to everyone joining. You may notice we have a little bit of a different format than expected. Today it's just going to be Floris and I. So for those of you who are expecting the wonderful Kirsty Paine, I look forward to seeing our numbers dwindle off. But until then, I hope you're excited. Today, Floris and I are going to talk about some of the recently released reports from NCSE, ENISA, the Netherlands. We're going to talk about some NATO exchanges, some exciting NATO events that are occurring right now in Tallinn. Then we're going to do a little bit of a charity challenge, which we're excited today. It's going to benefit a wonderful Netherlands challenge or charity. So, welcome, Floris, long-time listener, first-time player. What are your thoughts? Are you
No,
excited today?
I'm not a first-time listener, Ryan. Definitely not. First-time player I am, though.
First-time player. Very
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, happy to be here, and it's nice and typical. We have a event in the Netherlands called Sinterklaas, our version of Christmas, and it's a saint actually who comes from Spain, lives in Spain, and every November, December comes to the Netherlands and gives gifts to the kids. That's tied to today's
And that's the
charity.
charity today.
Yep.
For those of you who haven't met you before, Floris, would you mind telling me a little about yourself for the audience before we go into
Yeah.
the rest of the news for the day?
Yeah, sure. My name is Floris Ladan. I'm a security strategist hailing from the Netherlands. I've been with Splunk for 5 years, and before that, I was a defender in one of the banks in the Netherlands. And before that, I was a pen tester, which is not a guy who's testing pens, for those of you who don't know. Um, yeah, happy to join.
Well, this is going to be a fun day. We're going to be jumping right in. So we're doing a little bit different, but we're still going to play the news. So let's go right into the news. For those of you who also don't know, I am doing all the production today. So we are also going to have excitement of me figuring out how the platform works. So enjoy. So the first thing we wanted to talk about today is really some of the great work that's being done in Europe, and specifically perhaps with the UK, kind of starting off with there. The NCSC has just recently released a annual review. For those of you who haven't read it, it's got about 73 pages or so of exciting information. I personally love their use of generative AI. And we are actually getting some notes from the back end here. Some Kirsty is throwing in some stuff here. It is the first with Ollie Whitehouse as the CTO, so maybe he's to blame or celebrate for the incredible work with the AI graphics. Um, we had a lot of discussions about this, Floris, you and I, and kind of discussing the differences between what this report looks like, what other government reports look like, and we pulled together some high notes, some things that we have talked about, Chris, previously, right? Is that the data that goes into this? They really go into the threat actors that are attacking or that are of interest to the United Kingdom. They go into the cyber capabilities of other countries like China. And then something that I personally find among the most interesting parts about the NCSC's mission and what they fulfill, what they talk about this report, is also how they actually support the citizens of the United Kingdom. They support the businesses. They support not only the large, Fortune 100s, but also the mom and pop shops, and they support people who are worried about, hey, I just got this email in. Is it okay? There were some great stats within the report. For example, that they sent out 24.48 million notifications using their early warning system, which anyone can actually sign up to, and that the largest proportion of incidents that they saw over the year was around applications like Citrix, which certainly with the hot CVE summer, we're not super surprised by this, right? Um, Florence, you went into the detail on this. What were some of the interesting things you saw in the report that you found to be unique or different from your experience?
Yeah. Well, the first thing which occurred to me is I opened the report and scrolled to the timeline, which was the first sign that this is a different kind of report. It's focused, as I would expect, like threats here, threats there, popping up on like in March and September, and we're seeing this group coming in at that stage in time, which is also the case. But they also put a lot of effort in presenting what they do themselves in order to protect the British citizens. And that's I think the key differentiator, as you mentioned, and they call it cyber resilience, which has a large focus on this report. You see a lot of NCSCs like the Dutch NCSC, who put their info in trends and strategies and what's happening in the world. The UK actually has a section. The NCC UK has a section which goes into how do you protect yourself as an organization, how do we do outreach, which events that we do. So you're seeing a lot more of a proactive outreach there to the British citizens, which is something I really actually like.
Yeah, they have something called the Cyber Advisory Scheme, which I really like the idea, the Cyber Advisor Scheme, sorry, where small organizations can actually reach out and get advice from NCSC. And there's a lot of different areas there. And something else I thought was wonderful was this concept of they're called the Cyber Essentials Scheme, where organizations actually get a government awarded certificate saying that they've done a self-assessment, or they can actually do the next level and get a technical verification. And they had some wonderful statistics saying that 80% of fewer cyber insurance claims were made by organizations that had actually gone through these this cyber essentials scheme. And I just don't, in the U.S., the equivalent of NCSC, of course, is CISA, formerly U.S. CERT, and they do not have this focus on helping the average citizen or helping the local businesses, not in the same way. We'll say shields up, and there's a lot of material, but it's just not nearly as well thought out. And it's something I was excited to see. You brought up the Dutch NCSC, which is obviously the Netherlands version of NCSC. What are the differences that you see between those two, Floris? Is the Dutch one more focused on the nation states and protecting the government?
Yeah, so the biggest thing I'm seeing is the lack of proactive outreach to their citizens in a way that, like, this is what we do to reach out to small companies. And just getting back on that, I mean, the NCC UK has actually reached out to a lot of organizations with 50 staff or less, and that's actually something that I really think is interesting. And if we go over the Dutch NCC report, looking at really, they're taking a more broad level view, in which they say, look, we're trying to focus on OT. We're seeing that attacking OT is becoming more and more prevalent. Defending OT is still very, very difficult. And that we're looking at a more broader approach to management of national security risks than that we've done before as minor ministries or governmental departments. So it's a bit different in that aspect on what it's focusing on. The common themes, however, is actually that the geopolitics, cyber espionage, upcoming countries who like Russia and China, which are being mentioned there, actually in all of the reports.
Yeah, we see this in the U.S. as well. It's pretty consistently that the Western democracies have aligned on saying the threats to cybersecurity are China, Russia, DPRK, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea or North Korea, and Iran, right? These are consistently mentioned and called out as threats to Western democracies. And we see this across, ENISA's report. We see this, all the NCSC reports. We see this in CISA. It's that, as you said, that focus where people are really talking about it.
Yeah. The interesting thing, though, because you mentioned DPRK, is that they always stand out to me a bit as a threat actor, because from a government point of view, you expect either theft of information, you expect digital sabotage and undermining of democracy. DPRK has started and is still focused on just monetary gain, interestingly enough, from a lot of tactics, because that's still a driver there.
Well, and they're funding almost the entire, not the entire, but almost, I think one of the last reports I saw, the cyber crime aspect of the nation state sponsored or targeted work by the North Koreans is actually almost a double digit, if not a double digit percentage of their GDP. It is absolutely crazy that this is that large of an impact. But to your point, you were used to it being around espionage. We're used to it be about being cyber attacks, but it's an absolute standout on this stage. So yeah, um,
You
a
don't.
wild Kirsty appears in the background is also wanted to point out that this focus on citizens by the UK NCSC is on purpose because it's where do the UK citizens work? They work in UK orgs. So it uplifts businesses to uplift them. So it kind of adds to their mission and purpose, which kind of ties into this larger narrative that we're seeing across that difference, right?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
I guess the DPRK, you could argue they're doing the same thing by targeting Western democracies and getting money for their GDP. They're uplifting their nations. They're basically the NCSC of North Korea.
Well, I mean, looking at this, it's funny because the places where you might encounter other nation state actors are very different sometimes from the places where you encounter DRPK.
Mhm. Well, I mean, one of the big ones, of course, we see is in finance. I know that was something we've talked about before. Do you want to go into any details there? I know that's something you've worked and been a part, some of the Swift transfer stuff and exciting things there.
Yeah, well, I mean, without going into too much details, but the target of the DPRK is, of course, getting into Swift systems. That has been a large focus. We haven't seen that much in ransomware, at least I haven't, but we've seen them really targeting and going for the big virtual heists, which makes them an interesting actor and certainly on the radar of players like Swift and, of course, users of Swift systems, which are not as much as before, but still a large amount. And tactic-wise, we're seeing some advanced tactics. I recall a case from a number of years ago where there was an audit being performed on Swift transactions by printer, and attackers coming in and disrupting the Foxit PDF viewer, if I recall correctly, to disrupt that printer process and just take a multi-step approach into make sure that if the printer doesn't work, the audit doesn't work, so you can take your time and exfiltrate more money via Swift. I mean, these kind of multi-stage attacks was very interesting to me. They're not going for the easy buck.
Yeah, we've talked about it before on the show. I think people really I don't want to say disrespect North Korean actors, but they should be considered an apex predator in this realm. Like what they're good at, they are very, very good at. And what they're focusing on for the last couple of years is really around getting money out to support their nation state. And they don't, they're doing some pretty advanced stuff there. Especially when you think about the restrictions that they have in terms of technology and funding and education. They're really hitting way above their belt for the level of impact they're having. We're seeing this reflected, right? It's in the ENISA report. It's in the UK reports, in the US reports. It's in we're seeing this across the border, that this is something that we're going across. We talked briefly about the ENISA report. Let me bring that up here. I know you went through this as well. Something, Kirsty Paine and I were actually down at the ENISA Threat Intelligence Conference earlier this year in Athens. This is something that we've worked before with them. What were kind of your thoughts going through that report? What stood out to you, Floris?
Mainly, it surprised me that DDoS was still a threat this high on the list. I have a feeling that we as a society, at least in the West, we've outsourced a lot of our DDoS defenses.
Yeah.
To third parties, to cloud providers, and that is no longer such a threat as it was years ago.
It's funny you say that. Like for many years, I had one of the questions we would ask on an interview is kind of what do you deal with as a security professional? How do you protect against DDoS? And in my opinion, and I was open to any answer, but my opinion was usually you don't. You pay someone else to deal with it, right? But yeah, this came up. It's wonder how much of that has to do. I think Europe especially has been. Well, not plagued is perhaps a strong word, but with Killnet, the Russian-sponsored hacktivist group, they very effectively have been using DDoS against government organizations. They brought down Lithuania, had some significant issues in the last year regarding just keeping their citizen services up because of DDoS. And it is certainly a threat that people have if Killnet decides that a person or a company is actually being anti-Russian, they will descend upon with their DDoS and they will generate terabytes of data a second. It's actually pretty impressive. So I'm wondering if that's partly why ENISA is raising this more than perhaps we have in the US.
Yeah, and it is, of course, more a governmental problem than a private sector problem. In the private sector, you're usually free to distribute and offload part of your data management and transport, network transport management services, internet services to any third party. Government organizations can't just outsource, at least in Europe, can't just outsource their DDoS prevention to any cloud service like an Akamai or Cloudflare, because it violates their data sovereignty. And funnily enough, though, if you are interested in this, there is actually a Netflix documentary nowadays just being released called Cyberbunker, which goes into the bulletproof hosting offered from the Netherlands and later in Germany, and also goes a bit into the spam house DDoS attacks from, I think, about 8 years ago, which were one of the first times that the entire internet got hit by a large event. Those big events we're not seeing anymore, but we're seeing disruptions of local government websites still, and
Wow.
just
It's our helpful friend Kirsty wasn't able to be here, but apparently is still watching. She pointed out that we should probably explain what ENISA is for those who've never heard of it before. It's a European Union agency for cybersecurity, which contributes to the EU cyber policy and enhances the trustworthiness of ICT products, services, and processes with cybersecurity certification teams, cooperates with the member states and EU bodies, and helps Europe prepare for the cyber challenges of tomorrow. And of course, the easiest way to remember how to pronounce ENISA is just remember it doesn't rhyme with CISA, which means I'm saying it wrong constantly. Also notice we have a whole bunch of folks saying hi in the chats. Hi to Victor, to Michael, Fritz, whole bunch of folks coming in. Really love it. If anyone has any questions or if they'd like anything that they want to dig into, feel free to say something where we'll happily jump onto it and discuss in more depth. So look forward to any of those. I think we've hit most of the major reports we wanted to talk about today, Floris. But normally, obviously, we have our beloved Audra Streetman. She's on the show, but she's actually flying today, and she's on her way to what's your shirt say, Floris?
it
What do you
says,
have on today?
it says Tallinn.
Berlin.
Shout out to the
So
awesome B-Sides organization there, by the way. But
they do some incredible cybersecurity in Estonia, which is why Audra is actually on her way to go cover for her podcast, so she does with Kirsty Paine, the security detail, the Cyber Coalition, NATO's flagship cyber exercise. So she's going to be out there learning how that works, kind of talking to some of these cybersecurity warriors who are going through on these giant task force. But you actually participated in something last year very similar to this with NATO that you actually wrote up a blog on. I would love to hear about it, Floris. Tell us everything, all the things.
no, this is going to take too long, man.
Not the nightlife. We can't do that. This is a family-friendly show, but everything else.
I'll keep the nightlife to what happens in Tallinn stays in Tallinn, apparently.
Zip it up and encrypt it. And hope that quantum doesn't ever happen.
Yeah. So in any case, no. So NATO CCD COE is a NATO partnered affiliate organization, and they provide a testing ground for cyber warfare, cyber defense, and a number of other exercises. Their main exercises are Lock Shields, which is a defender exercise. It happens in the summer. And a lot of coalitions of defense forces actually participate in those and try to defend a virtual infrastructure against cyber attacks. And last year in December, I joined something called Crossed Swords. Now, Crossed Swords is an offensive training exercise, so for attackers to test their capabilities and their actions in a safe, secure, environment. And the situational sketch is actually really nice. There's two countries, Beryllia and Crimsonia, and
yes, very familiar with their beaches. Lovely, and the skiing is phenomenal in the winter.
Yeah, they are on their own internal maps. They're well hidden from other maps, but they do exist according to the CCD COE. And it actually started out last year with a fleet from Crimsonia sailing out. And in order to stop the attack, Beryllia went on a cyber offensive, trying to bring down 4 departments. And they had 4 operations. Hidden Ghost, that was meant to stop the Ministry of Defense. Golden Predator, which is meant to stop the Office of the President. Iron Oak, stopping the news services. And Urban Sun, which is meant to stop the 4 ministries. Now, all these were challenges for the attackers to hack, and they had bonus missions as well, like 5G environments, OT environments, etc. This took place in what they call their cyber range. It's a huge environment, over 1,000 machines, and they host a virtual country, if you will. And the attackers get a couple of days of time to attack these events, these organizations, and score points based on that. We as Splunk were. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So we as Splunk were involved as part of the yellow team, providing insights to, well, I wouldn't say defenders. Sorry, we wouldn't be doing active defense, but we would be monitoring and training, because we wouldn't stop attacks if we'd observe them. But end of the day, we'd collect evidence and we'd collect what we saw, and we'd provide reports and insights on like what has been happening.
So what was a lot of this has to do with training. A lot of it obviously is binding NATO nations together. For those who aren't as familiar with NATO, one of the incredible things about it is it breaks down barriers between national defenses. This was something that came up. One of the results of NATO was after World War II, when much of Europe was allied, they realized that we didn't have the same radio frequencies. The British troops couldn't share munitions with American troops because the calibers of the rifles were wrong. There was all sorts of small things, like even if we were aligned in purpose, we were not aligned in the ability to execute. And so the goal of NATO was to do things like everyone will have a identical caliber for their rifles so that we can all share munitions. We have identical frequencies that we utilize. We use the same, the NATO alphabet is utilized so that people are speaking the same languages. The idea of these cyber coalitions is also to bring that to cybersecurity for defense, right? So everyone is talking and using and moving together as allies and actually able to execute in this network defense. And we haven't had it happen yet. I think the last show that we had, Audra and Mick and I talked about how the Article 5, which is part of NATO, was not enacted yet for cyber, but it was considered when Albania was actually attacked by Iranian actors. And of course, this is just a constant aspect, right? Like we are, once again, this came up actually over Thanksgiving weekend. We actually had a case where the Municipal Water Authority of Alquapa, which is oddly enough a small town in Pennsylvania, a state in America, was attacked by Iranian-backed cyber group. This is where we're continuing to see this line, and having exercises like this with NATO really help us understand how we're going to defend, what we're going to do, making sure we're on the same plan in terms of execution if we ever do decide to respond. For those who haven't been through a big red team and blue team exercise like this, Floris, what's one of the biggest advantages you can see after your time there?
I mean, looking at this, for a blue team, it's always a perfect training to be attacked. Not only do you never get your perfect infrastructure that you might have at home in your home country or what you're used to, you're getting a brand new infrastructure. You're having to reset your views. You're having to learn quickly. You're having to adapt, which is tremendously good training. And then, of course, you need to start really hunting and figuring it out. What's going on in your new environment. But for the red team, it's even more interesting, because stuff which was observed was like that attackers under pressure make mistakes, like
Right.
the defenders do. The attackers will make very simple mistakes sometimes, because they have to remember so many new things, new ways of attack, new targets within a short time frame, and that made for pretty interesting times and situations there.
Well, cool. I look forward to hearing about Audra's adventure. I'm sure we'll hear about that before the end of the year. And obviously, it's a great exercise, but we will move on to talk about some of the things that we have coming up soon for Splunk. Let's see, we have 1 second here. As always, we are very busy people doing very wonderful things. So we have a couple of events that we want to talk about here coming up soon, which, excuse me while I vamp in the background. I would do a song and dance, but I'm not going to stand up, and no one wants to see me dance. So, Mick Boccio.
I beg to differ. Can
Yeah,
you do a dance?
I can sing. I can't dance. It's not.
Singing is
not gonna be
acceptable
pretty.
as well.
Mick Bocchio is going to be at a conference called Tech Beach in Jamaica. So if anyone's planning and heading out for there, it's a wonderful conference which really focuses on showing people from all over the world doing incredible things in cyber and IT. And they really focus on having people on stage who don't necessarily look like Floris and I. So a wonderful, diverse group of speakers and something that we're very happy to help support. Floris, you're going to be speaking at Cloud Expo, and is that Houghton? Did I say that
Yeah,
right? Or
Houghton.
Houghton? Houghton.
Houghton. Here you go.
Houghton. Howdy. Howdy, Houghton. You
Yeah,
should start your talk
that's
like
it.
that. I'm sure people will appreciate. Howdy, Houghton.
Can we get you as a Texan in there?
Oh, do not call me a Texan, sir. Or I will. I'm on the same continent. I can drive to the Netherlands. I will find you, and it will not be pretty.
Sounds
Said
like a
good day.
plan. I'll put the beers ready.
There we go. So what are you doing in Houghton?
So Houghton has a large cloud expo to the expo going on, and me and Patrick Peters are talking on our respective fields, either cybersecurity or observability and IT operations.
Cool. And then myself and Mick Bocchio and Tamara Chacon will be speaking on the work that Tamara has been leading around spear phishing and how AI can impact that at US Gov. It's the Gov Summit for everyone, but it's obviously in DC, so I'm going to assume most of the audience there will be US federal. And then Floris, there is an incredible event coming up as well for EMEA called the EMEA Security Week. What's that all about?
So we did EMEA Security Week start of this year. For those of you still remember, it's an event which we used to do virtual sessions, and then in the middle of the event we have a physical Boss of the Sock hybrid event actually, which is in the style of a Eurovision Song Festival with every country joining and dialing in. And looking at the report of the NCSC UK, they provided security coverage services to the Eurovision Song Festival this year. They might be able to provide these services to us as well.
Are you going to have Azerbaijan participate? That's what I always root for.
No, I think we should though. I think we should, and maybe we should ask DPRK as well.
I mean, Eurovision is not just Euro anymore, right? It's greater. No. It's really a world vision, and that's what we should strive for Boss of the Sock. So great.
Let's do that.
That is super exciting. Well, that leads us into the next part of the show, sir, which is going to be your first time doing, which I'm very excited. Let's discuss Charity Challenge.
And now, Splunk's Cybersecurity 60-Second Charity Challenge. Remember the rules. You've got to get through an entire subject in 60 seconds, or you donate to today's charity of choice. Good luck!
Lovely. We talked a little bit about the charity today. I have to admit, I tried to read the website. I was a little confused, very Dutch. Yeah. But yeah, we went into this for a bit, right? Being kind is cool. There we go. But that's today's charity challenge. You want to go over that one last time, Floris?
Yeah, so our version of Christmas is Sinterklaas for kids. He comes to the Netherlands. He celebrates his birthday on the 5th of December, and kids get presents. Now, of course, there are kids who can't afford presents. And Sint voor iedereen.nl actually allows you to donate money, but also presents or candy if it's properly packaged and sealed, etc. For kids who can't afford that. And the Stichting from Voorburg, which is not right next to my house, actually provides in that and offers these presents to the kids who need them.
That is wonderful. So that is the charity today, and of course we'll be using Splunk's Benevity, which means that if we donate $60, they will actually match us $60. So $120 will go off to this wonderful charity for kids who everyone deserves something for Sinterklaas, right? That's the general idea here. I agree.
That's the approach here.
Yeah, and I'm very glad those photos were what I thought they were. Looking at this, our 60-second charity challenge today, we're going to need some help. Usually we have 3 people. We have 1 person who is going to judge. If Kirsty had been here, I'm sure she would have been the judger because she's very judgy, and she would have judged Floris and I quite harshly. So we're going to actually ask for the people in the chat today to actually help us out. Floris and I are going to be debating, or at least giving our version of this, of the importance of red teaming, why organizations should test their defenses with real attacks from known adversaries. So that is the topic we're going to discuss. For those of you who've never heard of the Charity Challenge before, Floris and I are both going to give our take on that statement. We might agree with it, we might disagree with it, but your goal is to just go ahead and say whose version of it you like the most, and then vote on it, and the winner will actually then make fun of the loser, and then the loser will also donate $60 to that charity. So with that, Floris, as the new upcomer here, I'm going to give you the option to go first or second. Which one would you prefer?
I'll go first.
Okay, give me 1 second here to find the countdown clock, which is going to be interesting. We'll see if it still exists here. Otherwise, we might just have to do a phone. Looks like that video. 1 second here. I'm going to try one last thing. Otherwise, we're going to do this just like Bill O'Reilly and do it interestingly, but we'll see. Okay, we're going to use a phone this time. Floris, 1 second. Let's get this watch going. Timer. Done. Let's get this. Wasting time here. Okay. 60 seconds, and you start now.
All right, the importance of red teaming and why organizations should test their defenses with real attacks from known adversaries. Cybersecurity is complex. Cyber warfare is complex. There's no way of baselining your organization in times of attack. There's ways of baselining your organization in times of quiet times. But at some point, you need to figure out if what you've built, if what you've been constructing, all your firewalls, all your EDRs, any other security tools, any policy supporting you, will be ready to run in the real world. And not only your technology, but also your organization, your people, your processes. Do they support you in a real time of crisis? And at some point, the rubber needs to hit the road. And that's the point where you get a red team. Specifically somebody who doesn't know you that well, but will take any creative approach to figure out where they can attack you most so you can defend.
Well done. Floris, you are, as always, so impressive to me, being so erudite, so clear and concise, and your second language. It's always super impressive.
I thought I was all over the place, but it's my turn now, man.
There you go. Okay.
You ready, Kovar?
Go.
3, 2, 1.
So I actually don't fundamentally like red teams. I'll go on record saying that. Just fundamentally, I disagree with the concept of most red teaming activities, because most red teaming activities are designed around metricizing via financial reward, compromising organizations that are not traditionally in the way that they are actually attacked. The most innovative, interesting attacks I ever see are almost always via red teaming. But in my history of doing nation state attacks or defending, it's almost always the most boring stuff. And that's why I don't like red teaming. But when you're actually doing adversary emulation, which is kind of what these red team exercises that Floris and I are talking about, where the red teams are actually behaving like an adversary that is in the wild, using known TTPs, testing the defenders and pushing everyone and working together with the blue team, with the network defenders, with the yellow team to try to increase the overall network defense, I think there's a super huge amount of value. And that's why you should be looking at using red teams to actually enhance your network security for your organization to test those network defenses. Done.
Nice.
Whew. All right. So that was 60 seconds. That was a 60-second challenge. It'll take a couple minutes or seconds for the chats to come in. I would love for people to be able to put in. We have some great comments here from Palone Watts, who was talking earlier about the NATO. Thank you, Palone. Hopefully I said that right. Casey Corcoran, good morning to you. Surprising amount of top of the mornings from Chris and Jean Bernard, Remy. But hopefully we'll get some input here in a second. Floris, first time doing it. What was your thoughts? Did you enjoy the charity challenge?
It's a lot of pressure to make your points. I had 5 points and I got for 2.5.
It's funny, Jose, or not Jose, hi, Jose Luis Moreno. I was seeing your name pop up. Mick Baccio does a really great job writing his all down and doing these really crafty, clever things. For me, if I write them down, they come out really poorly. So I try to go off the top of the head now, which sometimes works and sometimes does not. Looking through, we're not getting any input, but that might come later on. Floris, what are your thoughts here? Who do you think won? Do you think you won? Do you think I won? Do you think there's a winner today, or are we both donating to such an incredible cause?
I think we both lost.
I think we both lost. You know who won? The red teams.
Yeah.
That's who won today.
Yeah.
Or maybe Kirsty won because she didn't play, and that's the only way to truly win.
That's fair. I don't mind losing in this case. Yeah.
Me neither. So there we go. The overall judge here, we both lost. We can both do better, fail less. We both donate to an incredible charity, help out some Dutch kids this Christmas. I love it. I'm here. Yeah, Fritz, I feel like Ryan's focus was centered more around why red teams don't bring value on their own. That is very true. And
I mean, the point which I didn't make is that the proper reporting and feedback loops are critical to keeping your defender sharp. And the red team is part of that. And if it's not part of that, it's just a floating organizational unit.
Yeah, a lot of times, I mean, I don't know how much you've seen this, but like I certainly have seen this where red teams, they don't provide anything other than, yes, we compromised your system. Here's your write-up. This is how we did it, but it's not really a useful, or it's a very esoteric ingress, or they had previous knowledge. But the best ones, that's not how they work, right?
Yeah, it's true, and I think Fallon has a good remark here, that the red team is the verified side to the trust but verify approach. And like one of the situations I've encountered was when red teaming, you might just find a way in which nobody knew about anymore, just because it's not in your identify scope of NIST.
Yeah.
On the other hand, even as a red teamer, you make some mistakes or you can't get any further. I've known cases where attacks on critical systems weren't possible because the admin for that system didn't do any work for the time of the red team exercise and never logged into the critical system, so they couldn't steal his credentials. I mean, that kind of stuff happens in real life.
Happens in real life. Well, speaking of real life, we've been going for about 40 minutes, which is surprising to me. It's gone so fast, Floris. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for everyone who has been here. We're going to have another coffee talk next week. I don't remember off the top of my head, but we have another coffee talk interview. I believe it's with the internal threat research team, actually, for Splunk with Audra. And then the week after that, we'll be doing an episode for Gov Summit, where we'll be off there and discussing all those wonderful things. So until then, I really appreciate everyone joining. Thanks, folks, for coming early for the coffee talk with Serge. And I'm going to finish it off here. Thank you so much, Floris. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for coming to EMEA with the talks.
There we go. Off we go.
Cheers.
Surge.